Hi, I'm Katie Tovah, a fundamentalist escapee and YouTuber. In honor of Black History Month, I am re-releasing my KKK history series. In the current political climate, real American history matters more than ever before. Please share this video far and wide. Thank you.
Hi, Shalom. This video contains mentions and accounts of racial violence and KKK activity. There will be use of some outdated language for historical purposes only and in no way reflects my own views. I'm going to disable comments on this video because I know I'll be kicking a hornet's nest if I don't. This will be a three-part series on the origins of the KKK, the resurgence in the 1910s, and resistance efforts along the way. The KKK and the religious right have eerie similarities and sometimes straight-up ties with each other. There are also connections between the KKK and some well-known businesses and companies. Yeah, this gets so much weirder and so much worse than I expected when I started this research. This was an emotionally tough video because I saw some of this ideology firsthand in the world I was in. Nowadays, most white supremacists have done away with the overt symbols like the robes and the crosses, but unfortunately, they have not done away with the ideology. You need to understand there was a lot in this community that I did not adhere to at all, including all the racial bullshit. Remember, I didn't grow up this way. I had gone to school with and worked with people from all walks of life. I shut down prejudiced comments from children every time I heard them. I would look them straight in the eye and tell them they were wrong. I became notorious with the church elders for how hard I fought. I may have made a lot of mistakes in my life, but in this case, I did the right thing even when it was not the easy thing to do. I feel like I can give myself credit for that. So it's common knowledge that the creation of the KKK was established after the Civil War. As said, the most common symbols that we think of are the flaming cross and the stupid robes. The robes apparently symbolize ghosts of Confederate soldiers coming back for revenge. The KKK started in Tennessee by some young men we would probably think of as spoiled frat boys today. I'm always talking about how people create or join cults because they have a problem they think it will solve. The Confederate soldiers had been a part of something during the war, but when the war ended, many of them were frustrated and disillusioned. People are communal by nature, and wanting to be a part of something bigger is a very real and very legitimate desire. In this case, the problem was that the South had lost the war and was really struggling economically. We all know that full equality wouldn't exist for a long time, but legislation was being put in place that hadn't been there before. Laws have to be on the books in order to be enforced. That was slowly beginning, and many Southerners were not okay with that. Frank McCord and John Kennedy were two of the founding members. One of their fathers was a lawyer, and they started out with meetings in his office. It more or less started out as what we might call juvenile delinquency today, I guess. You know, that behavior is not ideal, but in many cases, it's just more along the lines of adolescents trying to figure out life and boundaries and all those kinds of things. Unfortunately, we all know what this turned into. Harmless pranks turned into violent, racially driven violence against Black people. The end goal was to collaborate with Democrat politicians and start a secret country that would overthrow the American government. I have to pause here to mention that at that time, the political parties were not what they are now. It was the reverse. Republicans, by and large, did not believe in slavery, and Democrats, by and large, supported slavery. Another founding member of the KKK was Nathan Bedford Forrest, who had been a Confederate general and was basically considered to be the biggest Confederate hero next to General Lee. This was when the KKK really started picking up steam. In my research, I came across a lot of their creeds or mission statements or whatever, and they're absolutely ridiculous. I gave this a lot of thought, and I decided I'm not going to share those here because I feel like that would come off as making light of the situation. But know that it's ridiculous, absolutely ridiculous. There are a few important things to understand here. First of all, the Civil Rights Act was actually first passed in 1871. This goes along with everything I've been talking about, states refusing to enforce federal laws. Klansmen who were caught were actually tried in federal court at this time, so many escaped to Canada. Unfortunately, President Grant, the next president after Lincoln, would essentially reverse this legislation and essentially undo a lot of what Lincoln had done. The other thing is the way that many well-intentioned people look at the slavery concept is not entirely accurate. We hear that Black people were treated like animals, and I'm not denying that animal cruelty exists in the world, but the way white people viewed slaves was not even remotely close to how most people think of animals. My dog is a living creature who has emotions and the ability to connect with humans. Many Southerners had pets that they were emotionally connected to. The way slave owners looked at their slaves is about how I look at my washing machine. It's useful, but it's not alive, so I can't have a relationship with it. As said, however bad you think this shit is, I'm learning it is so much worse than anyone could have thought. Another thing you have to understand is that racist Southerners were really not fans of Black churches. In addition to providing spiritual guidance, Black churches gave slaves and their descendants a place to build community and possibly resistance efforts. Churches kind of gave Black people a leg up, as it were. In the biopic Harriet, in the scene where they're having a church service, you can see the slave owner in the room to make sure they weren't going to plan anything. At the time, many white people had kind of a scarcity mindset. They had this misguided idea that there was like only a finite amount of opportunity in the world, and if they didn't stop other people from pursuing it, they wouldn't get it themselves. Unfortunately, we still see this mindset everywhere today. I'm going to share a quote from a former slave, Maggie Stenhouse, the daughter of a Black minister. This is kind of iffy, so I'm going to hold up a card until I'm done with the quote, and you can decide if you want to skip that part. I gave a lot of thought to how I wanted to read these quotes. I felt like trying to read them in a Southern accent would seem kind of like mockery. Plus, I honestly don't remember what that sounds like, that accent. Also, I decided to read the notes as written instead of trying to correct the grammar. I didn't want to come off as thinking the way I talk today is superior to the way people talked back then. So I decided I'm going to read the quotes as written in my natural voice. I'm sure many well-intentioned people will have different opinions on that, but please know I'm deciding this from a basis of good faith. Quote from Maggie Stenhouse. The Klansman came, took off his robe, and said, "Where's that Jim Jesus?" He pulled him out of the room. The crowd ran off. Mama took the 3 little children, but forgot me, and ran off too. They beat Papa till they thought he was dead and throwed him in the fence corner. He was beat nearly to death, just cut all to pieces. He crawled to my bed and woke me up. I thought he was dead, bled to death on the steps. Mama come back to leave and found he was alive. She doctored him up and he lived for 30 more years. We left that morning. KKK activity died down slightly for a little while. Unfortunately, in the 1910s, it would become mainstream and spread like wildfire, and in some areas you would never expect. So that is where we're going to pick up next time. All right, thanks for watching, and I'll be back soon. If you enjoyed this video, please do me a huge favor and hit the thumbs up, and be sure to subscribe so you don't miss any future videos. All right, thanks for watching, and I'll be back soon. Bye.